Welcome back to Retro Movie Review Theater, everyone. It's the Reluctant Gringo back again with another forgotten film. Today, we are going to revisit The Abyss. James Cameron is known as one of the great American filmmakers of all time. He is also known as one of the most difficult and antagonistic directors in the history of movies. A lot of the actors and crew who work with him once will swear to never do it again because of the mental and sometimes physical torment they endure. The production of Cameron's film, The Abyss, may be the pinnacle example of his son of a bitch reputation amongst Hollywood. One where he has no regard for the actors, the crew, their safety or comfortability, the well-being of animals, or any patience for alternative suggestions because the only thing that matters is getting the right shot. However, The Abyss stands as my favorite James Cameron film for a lot of reasons, even though it may be his least commercially successful film on his resume. I do not think many others would point to this film if asked for their favorite Cameron offering, with what Terminator, Terminator 2, Titanic, Avatar, and True Lies hanging out there, but I have to be honest with you, I love this film. Personally, anything to do with ocean exploration and oceanography fascinates me, so my bias shows with this choice. However, if you've not seen this film, or it's been a couple of decades since you first saw it, I urge you to give it another look because for me, it belongs in the category of one of the greatest technical achievements ever put to celluloid. So, let's take a deeper dive at The Abyss. A film that nearly killed multiple people, including Cameron, caused multiple nervous breakdowns, and was, for lack of a better term, a death trap of a production. As always, a spoiler warning is in effect, but I'll try not to give away too much. Written, directed, and produced by James Cameron and released in 1989, The Abyss stars Ed Harris, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and Michael Biehn. The premise of the movie is this. We start out with the USS Montana, a U.S. nuclear ballistic submarine, and it suffers an accident and sinks deep into an ocean trench. Ed Harris, who plays Bud Brigman, is the crew chief of an experimental deep-sea platform drilling for oil and gas. This same platform was designed by Bud's soon-to-be ex-wife Lindsay, played by Mastrantonio. The crew, the platform, and a team of Navy SEALs led by Lieutenant Coffey, played by Biehn, are tasked with finding the sub, searching for survivors, and figuring out just exactly what happened. What is not known to our submariners is that the USS Montana sunk after an encounter with an unknown entity that drained all of its power, causing it to collide with an underwater canyon and implode. Unfortunately, the combination of a massive hurricane at the surface and the psychological deterioration of Lieutenant Coffey due to extreme paranoia set on from high-pressure nervous syndrome, a real thing that can happen when pressurization at certain depths goes awry, sets into motion a chain of disastrous events. And soon, the crew realizes that they are not alone at the bottom of the ocean. Some believe they are aliens, and some, especially Coffey, believe they are being antagonized by the Soviets. Coffey's solution? To steal a nuclear warhead and detonate it. The film becomes a race against the clock to stop Coffey, stop the nuclear detonation, and live to make it back to the surface. And with that short synopsis complete, let's talk about the real story, the production of the film, which will either make you appreciate it more or wonder how some of this stuff was legal to get away with in the first place. There were very few stunt people on set, most of the cast having gone through diving certification prior to the film. However, safety was still a major issue. The production budget was $70 million, making it, at the time, one of the most expensive films ever made. To capture the underwater scenes, a never-used nuclear reactor served as the on-location water tank where the sets were submerged within. When the massive 55 feet deep, 209 feet across tank was finally filled with 7.5 million gallons of fresh water, thunderstorms and pipe ruptures began to complicate things. The tank was so huge that it had its own weather system, and the water was often too murky to film. As well, local goats sometimes invaded the set, destroying equipment and urinating over the floors. The constant cold and submersion caused many of the cast and crew to come down with ear and sinus infections, and there were many near-drowning accidents on set, and finally, filming was delayed one day due to a bomb threat. And it gets worse. The water in the tank was chlorinated heavily to prevent any microbes from growing within it. This caused skin burns, as well as many of the actors' hair to become green or even white. Due to this, the crew had to apply Vaseline to their hair and skin for protection while filming for several hours underwater at a time. Now, James Cameron nearly drowned during production while he was weighed down at the bottom of the giant water tank during filming. His assistant director had failed to warn him to refill his oxygen, and realizing that he was running out of air, Cameron called for help to underwater diving professional Al Giddings. However, Giddings couldn't hear him. He was near deaf from an old diving bell accident, and with no one else nearby, Cameron realized he had to go topside as soon as possible. So he quickly released his helmet, his harness, and weights, and started to swim with great speed to the surface, exhaling all the way in order to prevent lung damage from decompression. As he got near the top, one of the safety divers held him down and gave him a regulator, but it was broken and only produced water, basically drowning Cameron. He tried to release himself, but the diver, thinking that Cameron was simply having a panic attack, held him even tighter. So Cameron only survived because he punched the diver in the face and reached the surface before passing out. The assistant director and that diver were fired the very same day. According to documentaries on the making of The Abyss and interviews with various cast and crew, during the rigorous and problematic shoot, the cast and crew began calling the film by various derogatory names such as Son of Abyss, The Abuse, and Life's Abyss, and Then You Die. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio reportedly suffered a physical and emotional breakdown because she was pushed so hard on set by Cameron, and Ed Harris had to pull over his car at one time while he was driving home because he burst into spontaneous crying. And after one harrowing underwater experience where Harris also almost drowned, he emerged and punched Cameron for putting his life in mortal danger. The production was so traumatizing that Harris has publicly refused to speak about his experience on working on the film. He says, "I'm not talking about The Abyss, and I never will." The most infamous scene that still divides moviegoers is the explanation on the use of fluorocarbon fluid, where a lab rat is used for demonstration purposes. Fluorocarbon fluid was developed at Duke University. It basically allows, in theory, a person to breathe underwater by inhaling fluid, much like we did for 9 months in the womb. Yes, this is an actual thing and is supposed to prevent the lungs from collapsing in on themselves at depths not meant for humans to dive. Basically, in this scene, a Navy SEAL traps a rat in a container of this fluid until it forces itself to breathe the fluid. This is not CGI, they actually did this. What you see on screen is a lab rat being subjected to drowning. When you see it, there are a couple of quick cuts away from the rat because as it tries to breathe the fluid and as it's panicking because it believes it is drowning, the rat shits itself, and that is where Cameron drew the line. Drowning a rat, fine. Letting the audience know that the rat shit itself out of fear, nope. We can't show that. In reality, 5 rats were used to film this drowning sequence, and they all lived. However, Cameron later admitted that 4 rats did go through the procedure without problems. The 5th suffered cardiac arrest. But fortunately, Cameron was able to revive it through careful chest compressions and later kept it as a pet. That's right, yes, James Cameron gave a rat CPR. That's a real thing. And yeah, I know, right now you're thinking, what kind of freaking movie is this? Well, it's a movie that set the stage for future Cameron projects in terms of CGI. The water tentacles in the second act look suspiciously like test reels for the T-1000 in Terminator 2, and it is one of the earliest CGI attempts by the masters of the craft at George Lucas's Industrial Light and Magic. Beyond the CGI, the acting from Harris and Mastrantonio is littered with tension and conflict. Probably not a hard stretch considering what they were enduring in real life at the time working for Cameron, and Behan's performance is menacing, and there was a lot of talk about being nominated for an Oscar, although it never materialized. The narrative and story are simply great. Underwater, darkness all around, the unknown, a 2.5-mile trench to the bottom of the world, nuclear weapons, aliens. I mean, Jesus, this film had everything crammed into it. And here comes my one criticism of the film, the ending. It seems rushed. Yes, the movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes long, but it was originally over 3 hours before the studio demanded cuts. In those cuts are deeper exploration of the aliens and who they are, an alternative ending, one that is much darker, and probably a little less cheese. Yes, the last 10 minutes are a little cheesy. I'll admit that. But most of Cameron's films have a little bit of cheese in the end. However, The Abyss is still a great film, and one that, after the success of Terminator and Aliens, gave Cameron a sense of thematic quality in his future films and his obsessive nature with pushing the boundaries of both physical and computer-generated visual effects. T2, True Lies, Titanic, Avatar, Avatar: The Way of the Water. You can see where the love of CGI and visual effects began in The Abyss for James Cameron that populate all the films to come in his future career. So, if you're in the mood for something with action, tension, and superb visuals, and you're a fan of Cameron's other works, believe me, The Abyss is a film that will deliver on all fronts, as well as give you a healthy respect for a cast and crew that literally risked their lives to entertain you. And that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Have you seen The Abyss? What did you think of it? And what do you think of Cameron, both as a director and as a person after learning all that you've learned? And know this, I could have made a 2-hour video documenting all the problems and disasters that occurred during this production, and so maybe one day a part 2 will be in order. But for now, if you're tapped out for ideas on movie night, give The Abyss a view, if not for the pure spectacle of it all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Monday for another edition of Retro Movie Review Theater. And remember, I am still your reluctant gringo, and from south of the border, salute and a huevo.